Well, welcome down to something to talk about in Mudgeeraba. We're really excited to have you here today. Whenever we gather in a public place in Mudgeeraba, we like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting. In this case, it's the Coomerary people. If you want to find a little bit more about the Coomerary people, there's a park just north of here called Graham Dillon OAM Park. And then there's just a park south of here called Warrie Park, and they're both parks named after First Nations people. I want to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging from this area or from other areas in Australia that are First Nations people if they're with us here today. There are three reasons why we host something to talk about in Mudgeeraba. The first is economic. We're hoping that as you come down to Cudahy Park and enjoy an interview with an elder or a person from our local area who can tell us a bit about the history of Mudgeeraba, we're hoping that you'll grab a pizza from one of our pizza joints or a burger from up at Junior's or a bit of fish and chips from inside the shopping centre. And we're hoping that you'll stimulate the economy of the Friday night economy in Mudgeeraba. So we hope that you do that today. The second reason we do something to talk about in Mudgeeraba is for cultural and historical reasons. We want to capture like a snapshot of why Mudgeeraba is the way that it is. And we love the idea that you might also experience some amazing emerging music from the Gold Coast. Tonight we've got Felicity Lawless and Miscellaneous, who are just awesome. They've been here many times before, and you'll hear a bit more about them a bit later on. I have a massive crush on Felicity. She's amazing. I see you over there, Felicity. Legend. We also want to thank Brad Hauck here. He is from the first officer from the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade, and he is our guest interview today. This event would not happen without willing participants in our interview program. Lan Leving and the Leving Events team has helped us put together the event, both the music and the interviews and the setting, the stage that we're here. We couldn't do it without this great couch. How lovely is the couch? It's a beautiful couch from Bookness. So if you need books, please duck up to our awesome bookshop. They're open until 7 o'clock tonight. We also couldn't run this event in our office without Courtney Mulder, who's our Community Engagement Officer. Big round of applause for Courtney. All right. And our hosts are the Lions Club of Mudgeeraba. And I'll see Russell at the back there, just pottering around in the red shirts. The Lions Club do an amazing body of work in our local area. Each year they give away about between $20,000 and $25,000 to community projects. And they're just, you'll see them at the local Bunnings. They also, just the other day, they were filling some boxes for the aged care facilities in our local area, and they've been doing some work with domestic violence charities in our area. The Lions Club are an amazing community club. So if you haven't met a Lion today, go up and give them a high five or give them a piece of your pizza and enjoy it. But let's get on with the interview. So today I'm here with Brad, who's the first officer at the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade. Brad, welcome.
Thanks, mate.
So, yeah, thank you. Big round of applause. Awesome. So I wanted to start, not just talk about the fire brigade, but talk about yourself. So, you know, becoming a firefighter is every little boy's dream. Tell us about the start of your aspirations to fight fires.
I grew up with a godfather who was actually a firefighter on oil rigs and up at Ampol in Brisbane. So I kind of grew up around fire, but I never kind of went into the business myself. I ended up doing a trade and then doing teaching. And then when I moved out here is when I actually got involved with the Rural Fire Service.
And how long ago was that now?
I've been here for 26 years and I've been a member of the brigade now for 19.
Wow. And so what was the thought processes you went through when you went from moving into this area and deciding the local Rural Fire Brigade was a place where you wanted to serve?
Well, I'd seen the team around, and then there was a huge fire on Gooding Drive, a bit like we had this year. And it came roaring across and there was lots of smoke, and from where I live over near the showgrounds, you could see all the smoke pouring up in the air, and I honestly thought it was going to come up over the hill and hit us at the showgrounds. So I kind of realised then that being out here in this type of community, I had lived in far west New South Wales previous to this, but being here there was fire and the volunteers were here, so I decided just to shoot on down one night and apply to become a member.
And what happens when you apply to become a member of the Rural Fire Brigade? What do they do?
Actually, it's a really simple process. You don't need any special skills, you don't need any special level of fitness. You just fill out the paperwork. There's a police check and a blue card, of course, and you submit the paperwork, and about a month or two later, hopefully, if all goes well, we hear back. You get a rural fire number, which covers you for workplace, insurance and all that sort of stuff, and you start your training, and we start training you.
And what's involved in the training? So how long does that process take, and what sort of things are included in Rural Fire Brigade training?
So at Mudgeeraba we have quite a regular training schedule. So we train every Tuesday night, which is not every brigade. We tend to approach it in a very professional sort of way. So you come down to training and we do all the basic stuff, so hose drills and using pumps and trucks and all those sorts of things. And then we have what we call FMS, Firefighter Minimum Skills, which is a national standards course that people can undertake, which goes into more depth and all the theory behind fire and all those sorts of things. But our first goal is to get people fire ready so that we can actually get them onto trucks, get them out to burn so they can get a bit of experience, and then maybe take them out to the second day of a fire with 2 senior firefighters so they can get some fireground experience, because you always learn faster on a fire. And the training just continues from there, and you can work your way up through different ranks and training levels. So Firefighter Advanced Skills, which is senior firefighter, crew leader, and then of course there's officer positions.
And before you joined the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade 19 years ago, they had quite a rich history. They'd been around for a long time. Can you tell us a bit about the Rural Fire Brigade's beginnings in our local area?
Yeah, so the brigade itself started in 1952 officially, so it's been around, well, 70 years last year. And so it's been around a really, really long time. There's a lot of famous names on that board when you look back at former first officers and sponsors and that. And
Danny Church is on that list, isn't it?
Yeah,
the guy who owned Pancho's, Danny Church.
I see a D. Franklin up there.
Franklin's and Lavers, Steve Davis, yeah.
There's lots of names that are well known in the area up there, and they've all done their bit to help the community. I know, the stories from the guys when I first joined was, well, we used to get a fire call and we wear our stubbies and thongs. But things have changed a lot. Now we have proper, PPE and helmets and boots and gloves and really nice equipment. So things have changed a lot over the years.
I found that a thong can sometimes really help just put out the fire in the backyard if we're toasting marshmallows. That can be helpful, but it's not the kind of equipment you use these days.
No, but very similar. We call it case boot. Okay. So we use our boot to put it out, and we use that quite a bit sometimes. Right.
So in the 50s, or in the early 50s, what does the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade look like back then? What sort of trucks do they have? What were the people like?
It was very, very basic. I know they had Big Red, who was, it's like a living person. Big Red was just a big, I think, Bedford truck or something with a big water tank on the back. It was retired the year that I joined, so I only saw it once, I think, and then we got one of the trucks that we still have today. But yeah, it was just use whatever was available. The farmers obviously have their slip-on units, or they'd throw a tank on the back of a trailer or whatever they had. So it was very much a kind of pull together with what we've got to make it work.
And it's evolved quite a lot from the 50s. And now, how many units have you got, and how many volunteer firefighters are part of the team?
Yeah, so Mudgeeraba has 3 vehicles. So we have a light attack, which is like a Ford Ranger. We have 2 mediums, which are actual trucks, carry around 1,500 to 2,000 litres. And then we have other vehicles available through the Gold Coast group if we need extra vehicles. Plus there is 14 other brigades here on the Gold Coast. So if I can turn one crew out, I can get the other brigades to send me a crew too if necessary, and we all back each other up. So it's very much a team effort. As far as firefighters go, we have approximately 48 firefighters on the book. And
that's just at Mudgeeraba?
That's just at Mudgeeraba. Now they're not all available all the time, because being volunteers, some people can only come at night, some people can only come on the weekend. It all depends on their work situation, their family situation, that sort of stuff. So on average, there's about 10 who are available at any one time if something goes pear-shaped.
And there's more to it than just serving locally as well. The Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade has become quite well known as a brigade who help in other parts of Queensland. Tell us a little bit about some examples of how that's happened over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so the Gold Coast area is known as a surge area because we've got so many members and so many brigades, Mudgeeraba being one of them. When there's big fires out west, or even like Coralbin last week, we provide crews out there. Mudgeeraba pretty well has a truck at almost every fire. So if you see there's a fire at Millmerran, often you'll see Mudgeeraba there. I was at Tara during the big fires recently. A lot of that footage was shot on the strike team that I was on, that you saw on TV. That was quite fun. Something like 30 metres of flame flying out the tops of the trees.
Gosh.
Been all over. I've been to Canberra, I've been to Bega during 2019, 2020. Crews go everywhere. And they're all volunteers and they don't get paid. So they give up a lot to go away, but you learn a lot and you get to experience a lot, and the camaraderie is very strong as well.
Yeah, I want to touch on that comment you made about the flames kind of coming off the top of it. There's obviously these moments where you think the stereotypical fire experience is a very dangerous thing. What goes through your head when you're in that sort of fire where there's flames everywhere and you're really just trying to manage it best you can? How does it work?
It really does come down to the training. That's one of the reasons why we're so strict on our training and experience. So we wouldn't send inexperienced people to do those positions because it's dangerous for them. But I know for myself, you remain calm, you apply your skills, you get out while it's safe, you don't push the envelope. It's dangerous, fire kills. So it's one of those things where you're really thinking, it's very tactical. Firefighting on a bushfire scale is very different to firefighting for a house or a building where you've got 4 walls and you can contain it. We can have a fire that 1 minute is pushing to the east and then the wind changes direction and suddenly you've got 7 kilometres of fire coming towards you.
Yeah, wow.
So it can change vastly and very quickly. So you're very aware of what's going on. You're noticing the weather, you're making sure you're passing information around, keeping communication up and all those sorts of things. But if it gets dangerous, we just pull out. In the end, it's very important that we protect ourselves. There's no use, they talk about people, property and environment in that order for protection.
Yes.
And as people ourselves, we pull out first before we protect a house and lose our lives. It's too dangerous.
Look, hearing that, you must have come across circumstances that were profoundly scary and, maybe you were afraid. Can you tell me of an example of some sort of rescue or a circumstance where, our local team was able to deliver a really good outcome?
Yeah, so I think the one that really springs to mind for me is Binnaburra, the night that Binnaburra burnt to the ground. We went up there and we were stationed at Lower Beachmont, and so in the summit area and there. And
this is 2019, this is not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. There's 2 sectors, and the fire was coming up the mountain, so up 200 metre cliffs, 100 kilometre hour winds. And it was just throwing embers everywhere, and we're sitting there on these houses being prepared to protect them. Now, there was houses lost that night. It was a bad night, really bad night. And in our sector, the fire hit just before sunrise. So suddenly, everything goes mad and there's fire racing through fields and there's houses in the road. But we held it, we saved the houses, and as far as we know, everything was protected before the replacement crews came in. But, I'd got up 4 o'clock the morning before. I got the call at 6 o'clock that night to go there. I got home 4 o'clock the next afternoon. It was a very, very long night, but it was, quite terrifying sitting on the top of the mountain, I can tell you.
I bet, and it feels so fresh in the community's mind as well.
Yeah, it's not that long ago.
Yeah, just 2019. Now, in a situation like that, an operation like what was going on at Binnaburra, there's no doubt that the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade is required to partner with other emergency services. Tell us a little bit about how, the Rural Fire Brigade does partner with police or ambulance or other outlets.
So we all work together. Everybody has their jobs. So police have their jobs with traffic control, moving people out of houses, keeping areas clear, all those sorts of things that, within their jurisdiction. Then we have the bush, and then we have our urban firefighters, so the red trucks, and they're doing house protection. I suppose we work because we know what our specific jobs are within there. And then we have the AMBOs come because they also back us up and provide protection for the crews if they get too much smoke or something like that. And then there's all the other ancillary things that come around the back of that. So you've got food and water and all these other things that we need. The logistics of running a fire are quite large.
Yeah.
And then there's helicopters and water bombers and everything that goes in there.
What sort of advice would you give someone who was thinking about a volunteer experience in the fire brigade? What do they need to know before they sign up?
I'd say give it a go. I think if you've ever wanted to be a firefighter, or you've applied to become a firefighter and you're waiting to find out if you get into the urban firefighters, then come and be a rural, because basically every call we get's a fire. It's not an alarm or a car crash, which is kind of good.
You're not just rescuing cats from trees?
No, we don't do any of that sort of stuff. And you just get good experience. There's the camaraderie. You build some really good friendships. From me, my family have grown up with me in the fire service, so they know every Tuesday night Dad will be at the station. That's just the way of life. During fire season, they often don't see me, so a couple of weeks ago I was, 3 days at Tara, came home, 2 days in Benogan and Mudgeeraba chasing fires there, and then the following 2 days out at Sarabah working on the fire at Canungra. So it can be like that sometimes, but that's not for everybody. It depends what you're doing within the service.
When I hear you say Benogan and Mudgeeraba, like it feels so close. It's 7 minutes down the road. What happens? How does that sort of fire start?
So there's a couple of main ways that fires start.
Okay.
Obviously arson.
Right.
So someone deliberately lights a fire, and we have had that happen. And we've had it happen a few times this year. The second way is escaped pile burn. So someone has a little pile or a big pile and they light it and it burns down, and then the next day they go to work and it's still burning away quietly. And of course out here we all use ride-on mowers. So when we mow, we leave the grass on the ground and it dies off and the fire just trickles out and off into the bush. So we see that one a lot as well.
Yes.
Another one's where people actually try to burn off their own property and it just escapes. So there's a lot of different ways, but they're the main ones.
But there's clearly some guidance that the Queensland Fire and Emergency Service provide to residents about when they can light a fire. Can you tell us a little about the fire permit system, and also touch on the fire warning system?
Okay, so the fire permit system is basically we have a fire warden, or you can, depending on where you live, you would go to Robina Fire Station to get a permit. Any fire that's under 2 metres by 2 metres by 2 metres, kind of like a cube, you can burn that off yourself without a permit, as long as you're being careful. Unless there's a fire ban, or fire conditions are bad, and then in which case you shouldn't light it. If your fire is bigger than that, you need to get a permit, which means you can download that from the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services website, and you can apply for that, and it has to go to either the fire warden, who out our way is Steve Davis.
Yes.
And or go to Robina Fire Station if it's in the urban interface. And once that's approved, then you have permission to burn it.
Yeah. And they have different warnings where you have high level risk and total fire bans. Help us understand how that system works.
The Australian Fire Danger Rating System is the new system that's been released, and it is consistent across the whole of Australia. So after 2019-20, there was a bit of a mess where if you went from one state to the other, the signs were different.
Right.
There was still a peacock, the multiple colours, but they had extra.
Is that what you call it, the peacock?
The peacocks, yeah peacocks. But now there's only 4 levels. So you've got, normally it sits on white, which means no real fire danger if a fire starts. Then it moves up to moderate, which is green, then onto high, extreme and catastrophic, I think. They changed it recently.
We're still getting the hang of it.
I'm still getting the hang of it. All I know is the colours, And the main thing is that it indicates how fire will behave if a fire starts. I always thought it was the chance of a fire starting when I first joined the brigade. But it's not. It's how it'll happen if a fire starts. So that's
why when we see really windy conditions, it's often right up the top. So if it's hot and windy, that's the worst kind of conditions for fire.
Yeah, from our perspective, wind is the most dangerous thing, because fire can be small, and if there's no wind, it'll just sit there and burn. But if there's wind, the wind will push it. So windy days are worse than hot days. So windy, dry days are the most dangerous from our perspective.
What do you think's been the hardest or most difficult day or time? Can you tell us the hardest day?
Do you want a specific day?
Yeah, give me a specific day. Tell me a story.
No, it's one of those things, you get up in the morning, you walk outside and you go, oh, it's fiery today. Generally that means really low humidity.
Yeah.
So a couple of months ago, we actually had like 15% humidity here on the coast. It was really, really unusual. But it was really early in the season, so it didn't matter. But we talk about the 30-30 rule. So if it's over 30 degrees and under 30% humidity and the wind's up, things can kick off pretty quickly if someone lights a fire or it escapes.
All right. I'm going to get away from all the danger and all those things. Tell us the most rewarding time you've spent as a firefighter. What's been the most rewarding thing?
I suppose there's a couple of things. One is the people you train, and you see them come through and become really strong firefighters and move up the ranks and eventually become officers. That's very rewarding. Also watching some of the people you train move on to other areas in life. We've had people who have gone on to become full-time fireys in the urbans. We've had people go on to join the Army, Air Force, Navy, following their dreams and moving on with their lives. Now, sometimes they come back when they return years later with their families. Sometimes they don't. But it's really good to see that. The other side is when you just do a good job. You're out there, you're fighting a fire, you get it contained before it gets near houses, and you protect people's properties. That's a very rewarding feeling that you've been able to do what you were supposed to do, I suppose, but what you set out to do, and that is protect the community. And that's what we're here for. It's
such an important job, such an important role that you guys play, and you particularly as First Officer. It's an honour to speak to you. I want to finish up by talking a little bit about the coming season. And so we're in the end of November now, we're heading into the Christmas season, and often we have thunderstorms and a bit of lightning sometimes. What can local community members do to prepare their houses for the coming season?
Well, realistically, fire season in this area is from around July to November. That's our driest months. Once we come into November, December, the humidity starts to rise and it gets hotter. So, and we don't get too many lightning strikes in this area. They tend to fall more out west, that way. But as far as protecting your house goes, clean your gutters, trim your trees back. It's important for storms as well as for fire. Make sure we can access the back of your property. Some properties, people just let their rubbish pile right up against their houses. Little things like they've got their wood pile up against the back of their house. Well, that's great. It fills up with snakes. That's always fun. But also, embers can start fires of them. So being aware of your property, making sure you clear your boundaries and that your fence lines are, good and easy to access. All those sorts of things. Because when we need to get in there, we need to get in there fast. The longer we take, the further the fire moves. And the other thing is too, from the point of protecting your property, we can't always get a truck to your property. There's just not enough trucks to protect every property. So it is up to you to do your bit to try and help. And I say to people, get a hose that reaches to your back fence. I went to Bunnings and picked up 3 hoses and joined them together so I can cross over a whole acre. Yep. It's a simple thing, but it could be the difference between stopping the fire coming through the short grass on your property, because you can just hose it down with your normal hose, or having it burn right through the short grass, which I've seen it do, literally, mowed grass, right up to the house. So
what you're talking about now sounds like what I've heard some of the other rural fire officers talk about. You're at a community event, maybe you're at the spring fair in Austinville, or you're at the street party here, and you talk about a bushfire management plan for homes in the hinterland. What's involved in a bushfire management plan, and how can people find out more about how to get one for their house?
Yeah, so if you jump online and go to the Rural Fire Service Queensland website, look up bushfire preparedness plan or anything in Google, it'll come up pretty easily. There's actually a whole booklet you can download, or if you come up to us at the Mudgeeraba Show and places like that, we can give you one. And it explains what you can do around your house. It helps you work with your family to prepare a plan in case there is a fire. So being prepared early is important. It's not the time to try and pack a bag when you've got fire racing up the side of the valley in Austinville, for example. It's too late by then. And if you've got family here, getting them out early is really, really important. And it can depend on medical conditions, all sorts of things. My daughter, for example, was a severe asthmatic, so getting her out of the smoke is really, really important. So a bushfire preparedness plan gets you thinking about things that you should be doing long before you need to do them. Little things like when you leave the house, putting a note on the gate so that we know that you've got a fire pump down the back, or people often leave it in their electrical box and just put a little sign on the electrical box so that when we go past we see it, so they're not letting everybody know that they've left home, of course, as well. Little things like that, they're all in there, and there's a lot of information available to you on the Rural Fire Service Queensland website.
Awesome. Look, it's such a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you for telling us a little bit about the history of Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade and what's involved in being a rural firefighter. If members of the community do want to get involved, what's the best way for them to connect with their Rural Fire Brigade? How can we take their next step?
The easiest way to take the next step is to contact your Rural Fire Brigade on their duty phone. Our Gold Coast area office is down at 32 Mudgeeraba Road, and if you call in there, they can put you in contact with us. We always arrange for people to come to the station and have a chat with us, because we want to see you, we want to talk to you, we want to get to know you, and then we need to sign the paperwork before you submit it. So it's really important that you do come down. But also it gives you a chance to actually have a look at the different brigades. But what I would advise is choose the brigade that's nearest to where you live, because all the brigades along the coast need members. So, you know, just because Mudgeeraba might be popular at the moment, such a good brigade.
We've got them in Bonogan.
Yeah, we've got Bonogan, we've got Claggaraba, we've got Gilston,
Numinbar.
Guanaba, Numinbar.
There's one up at Springbrook?
There's one at Springbrook.
Yeah.
Yes, there's one at Springbrook. There's a lot of brigades on the coast. They're literally in every valley. So you've got Currumbin Valley, Tallebudgera Valley, Bonogan Valley, you know, Mudgeeraba, not valley, all the way up the coast. So wherever you are, there is a brigade nearby. And you don't have to be a first responder, which is people who are roughly within about 10 minutes of the brigade. There's some people who join up and they only come to fires on the second day or do deployments. So yeah.
What a pleasure to talk to you today, Brad. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for promoting the Mudgeeraba Rural Fire Brigade so proudly. We're really thankful that you keep our community safe, and it's been wonderful to have you here and something to talk about.
Thanks very much, mate.